Welcome to this presentation on the subcategories that constitute Tai Yang or Greater Yang disease in the Shang Han Lun. The Tai Yang disease section is the first and most prominent portion of the book. It is almost 2 times longer than the next longest section, and in it we are introduced to the methodology and thought processes of Zhang Ying. Tai Yang disease is divided into 3 major disease subcategories: wind strike or Zhong Feng, cold damage or Shang Han, and warmth disease or Wen Bing. A considerable part of the Tai Yang section focuses on the wind strike and cold damage categories, and that will be my focus in future Shang Han Lun videos. There is also a reference to Yang and Yin disease differentiation. In the original text, these definitions are given in clauses 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7. First, we will review the general definition of Tai Yang disease as given in clause 1.
太阳之为病，脉浮，头项降痛而恶寒。
In Tai Yang disease, the pulse is floating, the head and nape are stiff and painful, and there is aversion to cold. Here it's worth pointing out that a category definition in the text is indicated by the particle zhi, and this implies that those characteristics will be relevant to the subcategory definitions that follow. So a floating pulse, stiff and painful head and nape, and aversion to cold are important in diagnosing any of the subcategories of Tai Yang disease. Another significant consideration is that the first sign in the first clause is the pulse. This implies that the pulse is the most important sign to consider when making a diagnosis. It is the cornerstone and perhaps the most difficult skill necessary for the practice of traditional Chinese medicine. These are the definitions of the 3 major subcategories. Zhong Feng or wind strike is defined in clause 2.
太阳病，发热汗出，恶风脉缓者，名为中风。
In Tai Yang disease, if the patient feels feverish and is sweating, if he feels aversion to wind and the pulse is moderate, this is called Zhong Feng or wind strike. The key formula for treating Zhong Feng is guizhitang or cinnamon twig decoction. We will be discussing this formula in more detail in a future video. Clause 3 defines Shang Han or cold damage.
太阳病，或已发热，或未发热，必恶寒体痛，呕逆，脉阴阳俱紧者，名为伤寒。
In Tai Yang disease, whether the patient feels feverish or not, if there is aversion to cold and the body aches, there is retching counterflow and both yin and yang pulses are tight, this is called Shang Han or cold damage. The key formula for treating Shang Han is Ma Huang Tang or ephedra decoction. We will be discussing this formula in more detail in a future video. Clause 6, which describes Wen Bing or warmth disease, can be divided into 2 sections. The first section describes warmth disease in general.
太阳病，发热而渴，不恶寒者，为温病。
In Tai Yang disease, if there is fever and thirst, with no aversion to cold, this is Wen Bing or warmth disease. The second section describes a variant called Feng Wen or wind warmth.
若发汗已，身灼热者，名风温。风温为病，脉阴阳俱浮，自汗出，身重，多眠睡，鼻息必酣，语言难出。
If sweat has already been induced, with the body scorching hot, it is called Feng Wen or wind warmth. In Feng Wen, the yin and yang pulses are both floating. There is spontaneous sweating. The body feels heavy. The patient is sleepy, snores, and has difficulty in speaking. Clause 7 gives the yang and yin differentiation of disease.
病有发热恶寒者，发于阳也；无热恶寒者，发于阴也。发于阳7日愈，发于阴6日愈。以阳数7，阴数6故也。
If the disease has fever and aversion to cold, it stems from Yang. If there is no fever or aversion to cold, it stems from Yin. If the disease stems from Yang, recovery will occur in 7 days. If it stems from Yin, recovery will occur in 6 days. This is because 7 is a Yang number and 6 is Yin. These clauses give us a lot of information to digest, and in this video I will just make some preliminary observations. In this table, I've summarized the characteristics of the subcategories I just described. I will start with clause 7, which expands on a similar statement made in the Huangdi Jing. Chapter 5 of the Huangdi Jing states that the excess yang results in heat or fever, and excess yin results in cold. In the Shang Han Lun, Fa Yu Yang means diseases which stem from the yang. This implies diseases from all the yang channels, that is, the Tai Yang, Yang Ming, and Shaoyang channels. So in diseases pertaining to these 3 channels, there will be fever and aversion to cold. Upright qi, or we could say the immune system, dominates, and in its struggle with pathogenic qi gives rise to these manifestations. Saying the disease will resolve in 7 days because it is a Yang number may have some numerological significance, but has not shown any clinical validity. Fa Yu Yin means the disease stems from Yin, and so refers to diseases of all the Yin channels. In diseases pertaining to these 3 channels, there will be no fever or aversion to cold. In this stage, the pathogenic qi dominates, and the signs and symptoms will tend to indicate deficiency or vacuity. Now let's turn our attention to the definition of warmth disease, or Wen Bing. We can see here that the signs and symptoms are sometimes at odds with the overall definition of Tai Yang disease in clause 1. We can also note that Wen Bing does not fit neatly into the definition of diseases stemming from Yang, although it is an early stage of disease. Because of this and other issues, it was reflected on by many doctors, and many centuries later resulted in the Wen Bing or warmth disease school, which was regarded as an extension of Shang Han Lun theory. Conveniently, no further direct references are made to Wen Bing in the text, and so we can leave discussion of this clause to one side. The text which follows in the Tai Yang section focuses on wind strike or Zhong Feng and cold damage or Shang Han, and I will expand on that in a future video. Before I finish commenting on the Tai Yang section in general, we need to consider one more clause. Clause 9 states that the resolution of Tai Yang disease occurs between the times Se and Wei, which are 2 earthly branches. I give a reference in the description section below to my video on the heavenly stems and earthly branches. These earthly branches can be interpreted in 2 ways, either as symbolizing seasonal times or as the times of day. If we consider seasonal times, Se and Wei correspond to the summer period. We could understand Tai Yang disease as being seasonal, occurring in the early part of the year, and no longer arising in the summer months. If we take the interpretation as being the time of day, we could assume that the middle part of the day, when the sun is at its apogee, would be the best time for diseases of this nature to resolve. It's worth remembering that Tai Yang also means the sun in Chinese. In summary, these are some general features of Tai Yang disease that I will expand on in future videos. Tai Yang disease deals with the exterior. The problem is usually relatively mild. It is an early stage of disease. There is resistance against external pathogenic qi, and the Tai Yang channel offers the first line of defense for all the channels. As we will see later, Tai Yang disease concerns Ying and Wei qi. I made a video explaining these terms, and you can find the reference to this video in the description section below. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you will join me in future videos in this series.